Welcome, everyone, to our town hall on leadership. My name is Brenda Leaks. I use she, her pronouns, and I am grateful and lucky to be the head of school at Seattle Girls School. Leadership is at the heart of our mission and our program and everything that we do at SGS. But even as we challenge our students to use their voices to make the world a better place, they challenge us to continue our work as adults to pull down and pull apart systems of oppression so that they can be better positioned to make the world a better place for everybody. That's what our kids are about, and that's why I'm so excited to present this panel to you all of female leaders who are in the world at various levels doing what they can to pull down systems of oppression, raise the voices of women, girls, and everyone in their communities so that in the end we have a better place for everyone. Moderating today is Wendy Eubank. And this next slide is going to share a number of things about Wendy. But what I want to share is that Wendy is a beloved longtime teacher at SGS. We are in our 19th school year, and Wendy has been with us for 18 of those 19 years. She has inspired countless students to go into mock trial, debate, go on to fields of law and advocating for others. And there are a good number of alum students who carry pocket constitutions because of Wendy Eubank. So with that said, I will introduce Wendy, who will introduce our panel. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Brenda. I'm Wendy Eubank. I also go by she, her pronouns, and thank you all for joining us for this town hall on leadership. One of the main reasons I joined SGS when the founding class entered 7th grade, 18 years ago, as Brenda said, the reason I came is that I could see that this place would make me a better teacher and a better person. The kind of student and the kind of parent who is drawn to this place and our mission around leadership and anti-bias work will be evidenced by our guests. So first, I'm going to be kicking off the panel by asking our panelists a range of questions. And then we'll spend about the last 15 to 20 minutes or so answering questions that we've received both during registration and ones that you will be submitting in the Q&A box. So please submit questions as we go, and we'll get in as many as we can. So time to introduce you to our amazing panelists. First is Adriana Hernandez. Adriana graduated from Seattle Girls School in 2018 and is now a junior in high school, where she co-leads her school's Latinx Student Union Affinity Group. This summer, Adriana participated in Seattle University's AI for All program. It's a unique experience for high school students interested in criminal justice and artificial intelligence. Adriana is very interested in criminal justice and hopes to become a lawyer. Andrea Capain Sanderson. Andrea is the CEO of Bird Bar Place. I want to be sure what, yes, a local organization that nurtures a more equitable Seattle by providing programs and advocacy that enable people to live healthier, prosperous lives. Andrea co-founded the Black Futures Co-op Fund, a new paradigm for philanthropy, uplifting Black-led solutions that ignite Black generational wealth, health, and well-being. She's also commissioner of the Washington State Commission on African American Affairs and is a parent of an SGS alumna, Shannara. Next is Jacqueline Howard. Jacqueline is the VP for direct sourcing for Starbucks Coffee Company and is an experienced supply chain professional who has held impactful leadership positions domestically and internationally. In 2020, Jacqueline was recognized by Global Women in Supply Chain as a top 100 most influential women in supply chain. In the past, Jacqueline has held top leadership roles at McDonald's and EI DuPont, D'Amour, and is an active member of the community, serving on several boards. She is also the parent to an SGS alumna, Erin. And Erin Howard, I believe you might be in the audience. Next up is Falana Pang. Falana I know well, as she is the assistant head of school here at SGS, where she also teaches science. Falana has worked in schools in California, Texas, and Saudi Arabia, and has participated in research programs and developed curricula to support students, especially girls, in science and engineering. Falana is committed to supporting students in developing their identity, owning their strengths and voice, and being change agents. So we are going to get to our first question. I'm going to ask a question to all of our panelists, and each one will answer one at a time, and we'll start with Adriana. The question is, what characteristics or attributes make a strong leader? And what inspired you to lead and develop your own skills in leadership?
Thank you, Wendy. And for me, what makes a leader is someone who is driven, creative, respectful, but most importantly, has empathy and is able to work with the community. I think that is so important. That could range from your classmates to your coworkers to the whole country. And just being able to have empathy and work with your community is so crucial, and keeping in mind that it's not this kind of thing like I'm up here and you're down there, but it's like, how can we work together to reach this mutual goal? And I got into leadership because from a young age, I am the older sister of two younger brothers, and I've always kind of felt this responsibility to lead by example. And I would say I'm a pretty social person, and I really love my community. So I've always sought out opportunities where I can work with others and just better my community overall. I have often run for student council, which is something that I've done from SGS and that I do until now at my high school. And it's been a great experience. And I could easily say it's just like so empowering, but I do recognize that it's been hard throughout, the way, and it's tough work coming up with those ideas for your classroom, or just like getting the courage to run. But I feel like SGS did create such a great foundation for my confidence and what I do now.
Thank you so much. And you have always taken advantage of those opportunities. I know, because I was your advisor in 7th grade when you ran for student council and got elected. Next up, Andrea, how would you like to answer that question?
Thank you. I think as leaders in an organization, in a community, in your close circle, there's so many different models of leadership, but the one constant is leaders can be a source. We don't hear about that often, but whether it's source of creativity, source of stability or peace or care, whatever that is for a leader, or whatever it is you bring through your energy, your skill, and your experience. I also think about type of thinking. Do you think in terms of togetherness and others rather than self is really valuable for a leader? Follow through, which many of us have heard before, but it's really important when you say things. There's the saying of the things and the doing of the things. And doing what you say you're going to do is so important. Practicing what it is you're espousing. And being flexible also comes to mind for me. Being able to soften towards others in situations that are different from you, that you're opposed to, giving time for slowing down and being empathic, understanding other people and their situation, having a strong sense of self even, being self-aware, aware of your impact on others in the moment and systemically, how one impacts the environment around you and how you're being impacted is a good attribute to have. And also gratitude, right? Being appreciative and showing that appreciation. And we all have heard this time and time again, leadership should embody courage, the ability to press forward, although one might feel frightened or fearful for whatever reasons, is being able to push through that inner critic or that external voice or something that's very new to you and do it. and get it done are attributes that come to mind for me. And, you know, what inspired me to lead for me is that when I was growing up, leadership was still, and still is in some instances, gender and race biased, right? What we've seen in society is that leadership roles and examples tend to be overrepresented by males and white males at that. What inspired me was not seeing too many leaders who looked like me or had lived experiences like me. And also what inspired me was my grandmother. I was raised by my grandmother, who I felt was a leader in her own right. So she inspired me by modeling and doing and just being able to have her set that example for me.
Sorry. Thank you so much. So many lovely reminders there for what's important. Thanks. Jacqueline, how would you answer that question?
Well, I think a lot has been said. I love Adriana's points around courage, and I think that was resonated again by Andrea. But I think it's a really important trait, and it sounds hard for people who think it's big. Courage can come in the form of speaking to someone you don't know. For some people, it's a big deal, right? It's not. I never meet a stranger, and everyone knows that. But for some people, it's a big deal. Or raise your hand and expressing maybe dissent in a meeting. I think Seattle's Girls School has been remarkable, allowing everyone's voice to be heard and giving people that foundation of your voice matters and courage is important for everyone to exhibit. But I do think on top of that, you have to be empathetic, especially in these times. We've learned what that really meant. Not just saying, "Oh, I feel sorry for you." It's more of, understanding, just listening, being there for people, having a heart. Because leadership is both heart and head. It is. It's a lot of both. And if you don't come forward as a person, as a human being, authentically, people are not going to believe in you or follow you, or think you're going to last because you can't keep being inhumane, right? Being human is a part of leadership and showing your vulnerability as well. And I'm prone to let people know the hiccups I've had as a leader. I mean, I didn't land here just automatically have a silver spoon in my hand and going into my mouth with all kinds of caviar. I mean, I worked hard, and I was also given the grace of having potent people around me that believed in me, that gave me great feedback. So it's also, as a leader, you are continuously learning. I mean, I'm X number of years old, and I'm still learning new things. So, and I'm learning from the young people. I mean, the people that are around us here in Seattle, my daughter, her friends. I'm not just teaching; I'm learning. And so I think that forever learner piece has made me an even better leader. And I'm learning about other cultures because, we all have biases, and unfortunately, they come up in odd ways. And so part of what I'm trying to do is develop myself by learning other people's cultures and their stories, because then it's easy to connect on the work and to have people believe in you. That's how I would answer it.
Thank you. The reminders about vulnerability and authenticity and curiosity. Y'all can see why we invited these particular folks. Falana, how would you answer that question?
Thanks, Wendy. Hi, everybody. One of the things about being a leader is also being prepared, because as the fourth person to answer this question, I have to agree with everything that's been shared. And also then being able to think on your feet. I completely agree with everything that Adriana and Andrea and Jacqueline have said about, working together, having a common goal. The empathy piece has been repeated across all of the responses. And for me, it's about that too. It's about understanding the people you're leading. So whether it's their stories or just being a really strong listener. And, the communication piece is really important for building trust with the people that you're leading, the community that you're leading, and knowing that everybody has different forms of communication, of being, having different stories, having different experiences, and kind of holding all those pieces while having a vision and direction that you're bringing people with you. And so I think about when a leader has clear vision and direction, it's because the leader is kind of centered in their values. They know what's important to them, to the organization that they're a part of, to the people that they lead. And when you have that clarity, it allows for that making of tough decisions. It allows for, supporting and guiding the people that they lead, and supporting their ownership of their work, of empowering people's voices, of being able to, as Jacqueline had said, receiving that feedback and learning from it. And so I think all of those are important in a leader. And I think I've always wanted to make an impact in my life. And I think that SGS has really, when I talk about having values and then finding an organization whose values align with yours, like that's what I've found in SGS. And it felt like such a mutually beneficial relationship in that SGS believed in me and supporting me in becoming a leader, and allowed me to take those courageous steps and think about how I can own my power, make a bigger impact in the broader community.
Thanks so much, Falana. Now I'm going to have one individual question for each of you, and I'm going to start with Adriana. And this is your question. What has been your experience as a youth leader? How can the community make it easier for young people like you to get involved and to develop leadership skills?
My journey as a leader has been a constant work in progress. When I was younger, I had so many interests and so many things I wanted to do. Like, I like this, I like that, I want to do this. And there is always going to be things to do, and there's always going to be problems to solve. But I just had no clear guidance. I was just kind of all over the place. So for me, it was mainly finding my confidence and finding what I wanted to do, kind of this big question of like, what is my purpose? And of course, it's going to be a long, it's not like I know my purpose immediately right now, but it's a long going journey. And I feel like for me, it was just focusing on like, what can I do right now, where I am, and with what I have. And for me, it was like as little as like, how can I just help my community as my school? How can I help my community in my neighborhood and what's going on? And for me, that's what drove me a lot to what I did, such as, like I mentioned before, student council, or creating a Latinx group at my high school. For me, that was the main thing. I am very in touch with my culture. I am Mexican, and for me, I want to see more Latinx representation in the predominantly white school that I attend to. So that was my journey for me. And as for what we can do for youth, it's so important to kind of push this message that there's no one way to be a leader. There's not this like clear cut out way. There are the silent leaders who are just as important and who deserve just as much recognition. And that everyone has the potential to be a leader and to do these things. And I feel like it's important to just provide these opportunities and provide these end goals, because that is what drove me, like knowing that there was an end goal to things, and that my work had an impact. So knowing the impact that you're doing and what you're doing is very important.
You are so wise. I just want to tell you that everyone in this Zoom room is still finding out their purpose in life. So thank you for that. And that the reminder that for us to communicate that there is no cookie cutter leader and that everyone has potential. Thank you so much. Our next question goes to Andrea. And Andrea, here's what kind of challenges and opportunities exist at the intersection of female leadership and race?
Thanks, Wendy. So, back to my earlier comment that leadership has been race and gender biased towards males, and mostly white males. Breaking that mold has been hard on so many firsts, right? Kamala Harris being one of them, being the first Black and East Indian VP. Even her role model, Shirley Chisholm, being the first Black female presidential candidate. And me, for instance, I lead a 56-year-old civil rights organization that has been led by Black males. So where I was not the first Black leader of the organization, I'm the first female. And there's pressure, but then there's hopefulness, right? In the expectations that are placed on you, whether the expectation is to fail or to succeed. And the dynamic of it being hard to find many role models to latch onto when you're growing into that role, when you're one of few, but then the responsibility that comes with molding oneself into role models for others and for those to come. Understand that there's a responsibility there to create that opening and that opportunity for others so that there are many more examples. You know, I'd say that SGS built that opportunity, that pathway of opportunity for my daughter, Shannara. Shannara graduated in 2009. And whereas she went to a school with many female leaders, she was one of few Black females there. So she had to break through a mold, but also hugely benefited from many young female voices who were yearning to be out in the world advocating on behalf of themselves. So it certainly prepared her in life in many ways, but also she got to see at that middle school age the responsibility it carries when you have to break that mold.
Thank you so much. I've still got a yearbook picture in my head of Shannara, so I need to see a current photo. Jacqueline, you're up next. And here's a question for you. As a strong leader in the corporate sector, what has your journey been like developing leadership skills and building leaders?
So developing leadership skills comes a lot with experience. I mean, sitting in the room, having tough things to solve for. I mean, I wasn't always a VP, of course. I started my career as a programmer. So Adriana, don't think you've got it solved the first job, because I am not doing anything I studied in school, first of all, except for problem solving. I'll say problem solving and connecting and being a truth seeker. So I started as an IT person at DuPont, and I was doing programming for machines that actually help to create fiber out of artificial substances from DuPont into yarns that go into fabric, that go into fashion. So there's the fashion back there. So I ended up going into the fashion industry kind of in that way, oddly enough. And then I decided things were changing in the industry and I needed to change. So after living in 3 different locations with that company, having phenomenal experiences and some tears, because it was hard at times. I didn't know what I got myself into. So we can talk about that later. But I remember walking around the streets of New York, you know, being determined I was going to live there. And I got there and I was scared out of my wits. And running into a friend from college, which made it all better. I found somebody who knew me and made that life in New York a little bit more palatable. But then after being in that company for years, I went to another company, had nothing to do with fashion at all. It was hamburgers. Everyone knows the Golden Arches. But along the way, I really, really, really was open to feedback, opportunities. I mean, going to New York City at 25 years old is not for everyone. It really isn't. But the one thing I learned to do before I moved anywhere, and I did it before I came here, is I networked well in advance. Who lives there? Give me a list, you know, tell me where not to go, where not to live. Give me some elders that can help guide me through this path of a new city. I did the same thing in this journey to Seattle. So we're pretty grounded in the community, and that's how I found SGS. We were scouting around for great schools, and I happened to go to a job fair and talk to Simone Davis, and she leaned into me and told me all about SGS. And, you know, fast forward 3 years, the kids are in high school here. We're very active in the community. So the skills are both inside and outside work. They're all the same. It's called adaptability, optimism balanced with realism, always finding the yes, glass half full. That's just me. And so when times get tough, I get tougher and I find people to help out. And so my real mantra is people want you to succeed. And so let them help you and don't block their blessing. They're giving you some tough feedback. Take it, figure out how to use it and make yourself better. And those that don't want you to succeed, you know, identify them and keep them out of your gates because you don't need the negativity. I really, really have surrounded myself and been blessed with people who affirm me. I've known people since my grade years, and that's my best friend, the kid's godmother. I've met ma- magnificent business leaders from across the world, and they've been really thoughtful about helping me understand different cultures, how to invest my money. I mean, you ask questions of people, and they're more than happy to help you. And if you tell them again later in years, hey, here's how I use your advice, they're thrilled. You know, they're happy that you actually used some of their advice to help you become more successful. So don't forget to give that back to them, and don't forget to pay it forward. Because behind me, not literally, but yeah, these ladies are behind me, but you'll see a lot of people that I have brought into organizations that I've nurtured, mentored, and developed. And if I left the company, they're still doing great, and we keep in touch. So I want to live that legacy every day. And what I realized, every time you talk, every time you're someplace, someone's watching you. And you may touch them in a very phenomenal way. You never know how your words will impact someone, your actions, or your kindness. So just remember that, because the world is watching. And we really want our young leaders to be the first and the second and the third and the 15th. Like Mae Jemison, where are the astronauts behind her, right? You know, behind Kamala, where are the other VPs? Let's get that pipeline filled up with all this great, phenomenal talent. And we're looking at it.
And we are looking at it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All I can imagine is that you said when the times get tough, sort of your half full glass, your glass gets full. Your glass must be a like this year. I'm just imagining your glass. Thank you for those reminders about problem solving and connecting and truth seeking. Next up, this is a question for you, Falana. How can we as a community nurture more and better leaders who will guide us with compassion and integrity, qualities we know have been really severely lacking in the recent, at least the leadership from Washington, D.C., compassion and integrity. And how does SGS do this?
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. Well, I think first of all, in nurturing more and better leaders, like just recognizing that anyone can lead and growing in their leadership. And so I think believing in people, in students, in women, in people of like just in showing that outwardly is really important. And I think also finding the people who are going to mentor and support. I think about female leaders who have believed in me and supported me. I mean, from Brenda Leaks to Barbara Fraley, who was my predecessor, to colleagues of mine who aren't in kind of positional leadership roles, but just support me because of like their encouragement, their honest feedback. I also think about helping support our leaders by creating spaces where they have a supportive community, like, for example, our affinity group spaces. And, how for myself as a leader in the academic world, like I've found a group of people of color who are in similar roles as me to support me in my leadership. Because sometimes the self-doubt can come in. And so I think by having that supportive community, you learn to lead with compassion because people are showing you compassion. You learn to lead with integrity because you have people who are modeling, owning, and learning from their mistakes. And they do that with vulnerability, and they do that with transparency. And they do that with humility. And I think really just providing those models is really important. And so surrounding our leaders with those models is really important. And I think that's what SGS does. We create that. Well, first of all, I think about our mission. Our mission is to develop and inspire courageous leaders. And we create this community where we encourage our students to take risks, to make mistakes, to share their ideas, to just put their ideas out there, to learn how to communicate and collaborate well, to problem solve, to think on their feet, and then to grow from the risks and the mistakes that they take and make. And it shows up in like the smallest ways. For example, just like working on a math problem with a classmate, right? And asking for their take on how they solve the problem. To really big ways, like the ways that we ask our students to stand and deliver or think on their feet as doctors on the medical board exam, or as lawyers in mock trial, or as astronauts in our mission culminations. And so I think just providing all those opportunities where students get to practice speaking, owning their voice, thinking critically, looking at all sorts of perspectives, learning to listen, being given tools to resolve conflict, or to learn how to disagree. That is actually really important for progress, right? Is hearing different perspectives and learning from different sides. And then finding the common ground. And I feel like that there's, again, in small and big ways, that we do that at SGS.
Thank you so much. You just validated everything like. Thank you. It's so reassuring to hear that, and especially that last, learning through disagreement as well as collaboration and consensus. That's super important, I think, no matter what line of work you're in. And the idea that we not only communicate that we do believe in you, but we demonstrate how we believe in you, how much we believe in you. Now we are going to get to my favorite question of the evening, which is the lightning round for each of you. You're each going to answer the same question. And here's the setting. The inauguration, which we all, I think, breathed a little easier after Wednesday went off without a hitch. So the inauguration of President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris was a historic moment in many ways, especially the election and inauguration of Kamala as our first woman vice president. So, in 5 words or less, this is very challenging. What were your hopes for the future of our national leadership? And as an example, I'll tell you how Brenda Leaks, our head of school, answered that question. Don't get a Twitter account. So, Adriana, do you feel okay to start again?
Yes, of course. More diversity, more women, please.
I love, that needs to be a button or a bumper sticker or both. Andrea, 5 words.
Okay, I have my 5 words, but I need to explain it with more than 5 words.
That's fine.
Brave enough to be it, right? It's the words of Amanda Gorman's poetry recital when she said, "For there's always light if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it."
I love that. What do you think, Jacqueline?
Well, I was kind of there too with that. I listened to that poem 4 times. I ordered the book in advance. It's coming my way, I guess, in September when it's published. But I was the same kind of way, but it was be brave, stay the course.
You guys are so good. All right, Falana, that's a hard act to follow.
Yeah, mine's 6 words.
That's
She's got that.
okay.
Make it into 5 by removing an adjective, but make change for the most marginalized groups.
Mm-hmm.
For the most marginalized groups. Yeah.
Y'all are good. All right. We're going to start now going with some questions that we both received in advance and are in the Q&A here. So don't forget to put one in if you've got one. The first question I'm going to ask, and any of you can answer it, what is the way, a couple of you just now mentioned mentors and the importance of mentors. And what's the best way to find a mentor, to approach a mentor? Do you have any tips for our audience about that?
I can go.
Thank you.
And I think the word sort of makes people nervous. And I had a conversation with someone who I hired at a previous company, and she was great. I'm like, well, who's mentoring you? Oh, I don't know about that. That sounds scary, she said. I was like, well, we all get up in the morning, get out of the bed, we're human. So what's so scary about it? And I think people imagine this big, you know, goddess on top of Mount Olympus. That's the mentor. No, the mentor could be your peer. It could be somebody who's younger than you, right? Adriana could be my mentor. It's called reverse mentoring. It could be one level above you at work, or someone who's not in your space that can give you sound advice. You usually seek out mentors who have some kind of experience in something you're trying to achieve, so they have a little bit more wisdom than just guesswork. But I've had both formal and informal mentors along the way, and most of them have been in the form of people who are different than me, because you don't need to hear your own voice in the echo chamber. We have enough of that going on. And so if you really want to get sound and candid advice from a person, you need to find somebody different than you. And sometimes you get help from your manager or people who you just ask, I'm looking to improve my public speaking or my mindset in this area. Who do you know? And usually people have a list of folks that they can refer you to. But the other thing I want to say is that people mix up things like mentor, advisor, advocate. And so we at work, we talk about people who are your advocate. There's somebody that actually can sit in the room and help make decisions on your next step career. And some of your mentors may not even be in that room. They might be at some other place in the business, outside the company. They may speak your name in a pleasurable way, but they don't have influence on your career. So you need people who are advocates for you, that they speak about you in a good way when you're not around. And then advisors are people who give you points of view, and they don't really have that much connection with you. So there's a lot of good, lots of stuff on Eventbrite now about training yourself up and just different online things that are super free. But I would say there's only one way to get better, and that's to be with people who are better than you. I play golf, and I don't play with people who are like taking too much time and can't hit the ball. I play with the Tiger wannabes. They're still fun people. But I got to get better. And the only way I'm going to get better is to be around people who are better than me and be humble enough to know that. So that's my advice for mentors. And I happily mentor a lot of young ladies, especially people of color. And I also mentor young white men as well. Old white men are kind of hard. But I do have a few that I've been trying to mentor.
That is such a helpful response. And I love the reminder that the mentor could be someone, at the next level down. It doesn't have to be someone above you. And I feel like my students mentor me all the time and inspire me. Did any of our other panelists want to respond to that question?
I love Jacqueline's response, and I will only build a little bit on it, that yes, having the courage to reach out and ask, right? Not putting them on a pedestal so much so that they're unapproachable. But also you can find other mentors through people you already know and you feel comfortable approaching, whether it's your teachers, whether it's your peers who may know someone. You can reach out through your network that you feel comfortable with, and they can help take that leap for you too.
Thank you. So a next question was sent to us beforehand. So I'm gonna just read this one here. How might female empowerment and equity and the historical content that's relevant be taught in a co-ed middle school or high school to make it approachable and relevant to males, both students and teachers who identify as male, while maintaining a similar passion and prioritization as we have at SGS? And the thought behind that is that even more progressive schools seem to shy away from the direct focus that is needed because they fear marginalizing males. And teachers are apparently often on board, but unable to prioritize female empowerment and equity because parents might be wary. So To sum up, any ideas on how to make female empowerment and equity more of a focus in other schools with the same kind of passion that we're able to at SGS? And again, anyone can respond to that who has
I can't speak eloquently as an educator, Mike. I'm not an educator, I'm in the nonprofit sector. But my brief answer is, and Jacqueline maybe knows this term because I'm also stealing it from the for-profit world, which is WIFM. You got to make it what's in it for them, right? And I think COVID is a really good example to show us that when we all do better, we all do better. And we've got to help people understand from different experiences and different backgrounds that it is our responsibility to help those least fortunate, least capable, because then we'll all do better ultimately. So I think it's finding a way to bottom line it.
And it reminds me that we know about empowering women. When women do better, the entire community does better. So it's back to, I love the what's in it for, I never heard it phrased that way, but with them.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a good latch onto that, Andrea. It's also women hold up half the sky. And that was something that came out of China. I know you can debate who said it wasn't always the most favored place in the world, Mao Zedong, but I mean, he heard and listened to and had to listen to the women in China because they do hold up, if not more than half the world. But they are the sky, excuse me. But the point here is that I appeal to people's better angels too. Most people have a mother, right? They've got it, maybe a daughter and a sister, or someone in their space, an auntie who's a woman. And so how would you like them to remember you? Like what kind of legacy you're gonna leave if they were looking at you right now? You want to make them proud. And so you don't want to, there's no reason why all lights can't shine brightly. Like just because your light's bright doesn't mean someone else's has to be dimmed. So brighter light brings all this great thing out to the front. And I have said over and over again, when a woman asked me a question in a group of a mixed company, I said, are there men listening? So she asked the question, so are you going to listen to my answer? Because it matters that you're listening. And it matters because you have to advocate for one. We can't sit here just like people of color and fix the problem that we didn't create, right? So we need you to be listening with both of your ears and less of your mouth being open. So are you listening as the question's being asked? And are you listening to yourself and what you're going to jump to versus solve for? So they need to be advocates. We aren't the ones that left ourselves out. We aren't the ones that said we weren't good enough. We weren't the ones. And in the background, if it weren't for the women in this last election, things wouldn't have happened.
Oh.
If it weren't for women, the Montgomery bus boycott wouldn't have happened. If it weren't for women, blah, blah, blah. You fill the blank in. So that's the reality of it all. So, the one thing we have to do is stop playing those negative tapes in our head and stop believing in them. Because we didn't create those negative tapes. Somebody else did because they were fearful of our light. So just, keep your head up, keep stepping, know that you're from really good places and you have a lot of work to do. And again, keep those negative people out of your gate. But there's some great men who are older, who are white, who really want to help. And so we're not all bucketed in these good and bad buckets. We're human. Let's appeal to our better angels.
Yeah, I was going to add to that and say that, just like we do when we talk about race and we have our white allies who are doing their work and talking to their white peers, I think that when we're talking about, structurally, like finding our male allies and, hiring culturally competent and woke males who will can speak to their peers and help make that structural change will be really important.
Thank you. And hopefully one of those males you're talking about, the older white, just got elected. So we can only hope. So another question we received ahead of time, what advice do you have for young girls developing confidence when they encounter a world that perceives female displays of self-assurance as pushy or aggressive? Would anyone like to respond to that?
How about we just ignore it?
Okay.
No, I'm not saying ignore the question that's being asked, but just that's that negative.
Yeah, the talk
stuff. It's like so if a guy were doing it, they'd be like really great, be a sort of, and that's what we need. So these are those typecasts, those boxes that people want to put you in. And again, if it weren't for leads like this, we wouldn't be where we are. So I don't understand the question. I don't understand why we're absorbing that self-criticism. I don't even think it's true.
Yeah.
I don't know. I get tired. I'm like Fannie Lou Hammer. I get tired of being tired. Get sick and tired of being sick and tired because it's wearying trying to reverse the mentality of other people, right? It's weary. It makes me weary. And so my energy gets zapped by that. I asked them to go back and why don't you just go educate yourself because it's tiring for me to be your teacher. I don't even know where you got this stuff from, right? So we got to stop absorbing all this stuff that's been put in place to keep us oppressed, down, and unheard and muted. That's
Well,
what I mean by ignoring it because so many people have said so many things about me I've lost track and I think what I'm here for a reason and I'm gonna step into it.
yeah, well said. Step into it. And that leads us to this next question that was in our Q&A. Being a leader means making tough decisions. So uh, you're all in roles where you have to make some tough decisions. So what guides you when you need to make a tough decision?
You know, I started out one of my qualities earlier about how do you think your perspective on togetherness versus self, and really being able to put yourself in others' shoes to understand their perspective. It doesn't mean you're going to align with what they want, but coming from a place of understanding and over communicating those tough decisions and why, and putting them into context. Over communicating is a huge deal at our organization because oftentimes we are making decisions at the top that will impact people at the front lines. And so communicating early on that decisions are coming, communicating where there are changes that will impact people, naming it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that naming it means that the thing is going away, that we won't make the change. But talking about it and deeply listening to how it's impacting people and making shifts where you can. There are times where we've made shifts after deeply listening, but creating space to hear people when we need to make those difficult decisions have gone a long way for us at the organization.
Thank you so much. Adriana, I have a question for you. When we think about developing leadership, a question came to us before this, in the pre-event. How can we help students develop healthy skills in fellowship as well as in leadership? So in other words, how can we help people learn how to collaborate, which collaboration is really essential to leadership? So any advice for us in helping students develop that ability to be in community, not just leaders?
Yeah, thank you. So I would say keep it in mind that you're a work in progress. Everyone is a work in progress, and that not everything is going to go your way. And knowing that at times you are going to have to compromise and come to a mutual agreement, and you're going to have to be okay with that. Sometimes it's important to be okay with being a little uncomfortable as long as it's, your boundaries are still set. But working in a group, working with the team is so important, like you mentioned, and especially when it comes to leadership. So knowing when to listen is also very, very important. Knowing when it's time for you to speak up for yourself is very important, and setting your boundaries. And but yeah, most importantly, knowing that you need one another. Depending on what you're doing, you need one another, and that community is so important, and it helps build you up. So that's what I have.
Thank you. I knew you were the right person to ask. So here's a question that we received beforehand. How do we promote leadership while at the same time focus on creating equitable leadership facilitation? We empower white students who thrive in leadership positions without some of them fully understanding how their own privilege shows up in these leadership roles and can sometimes be detrimental to students of color in the same space. So again, any thoughts about what it looks like to foster equitable leadership facilitation?
So I think I struggle a little bit, and this has come up in my home as well, is why aren't more why isn't there more advocacy for people of color to run for such roles? So most of the time when there's campaigning going on, and SGS is very unique because it's an all girls school, right? But even where my kids go to school today, I'm like, well, how come no one else is running? Like, do they not feel like they could do it? Are they lacking courage, lacking advocacy? Because we're talking about school, we're not talking about running the country yet, right? So I wonder what stops people from running for the roles, A, and then B, if they're not running, why aren't they in the supporting mode in helping that new leader that's elected to make sure they stay on balance, like they have an ear? And it reminds me also of when parents do or do not participate in, parent associations. And I'm also often troubled by, are the hours we have meetings conducive to people who have to work different shifts? I mean, some people don't have the luxury of working from home or working on these precise time frames, and so we may be excluding people. With Zoom, it might be easier because you don't have to travel. Maybe you live further away. But are we making things accessible? And therefore, people feel like they're welcome and they belong there. There's a lot of things we have to think differently about. So you're just wondering, why people don't run. Are they not encouraged by their teachers? Because that's the other thing too, the bias is there. And so the quiet people usually are the most formidable people that we don't tap into. So I would just love to know, why aren't people running for these leadership roles at school? I don't know.
Yeah, I love that, Jacqueline. And I also say, add to that, if we would constantly be asking the question, you keep this question top of mind, is who's benefiting and who's burdening? Who's benefiting and who's burdened? And allow discussions, space, and curriculum to talk about that, whether it's the world outside, whether it's in the classroom, your life outside the classroom, who's benefiting, who's burdened.
Another way I think about it, like who made the mess and who's cleaning it up.
I wasn't going to go there.
I'd be curious to hear from Adriana, actually, in terms of how you see, whether it's a SGS or any other space, how space can be created for different forms of leadership and voices to be heard.
Thank you. And going back to what Jacqueline had mentioned, of like why people don't run. And I remember that before I didn't want to run. I mentioned before that I ran for student council, and in middle school I was in student council, and then once I got into high school, it's like you'd think I just immediately go and do it because I already have experience, but I was afraid to run because not so much afraid, but like just hesitant, I could say, just because you see who's running and you're like, am I capable? And those questions, we shouldn't be asking us those questions, it shouldn't be like that. And I shouldn't have felt like that. I should have felt like I was just as capable as any other person who was running. But unfortunately, it wasn't that for me, but I'm glad I did it anyway. And I'm glad I, built up the courage to do it. But it's like so many other students didn't, and they could have also had the potential to do it, and I know they could have. And I would say it's so important for schools when they promote these opportunities to make it be known that everyone has the possibility to be in that position. And I know it's easier said than done, but also when there's, sorry here, I'm kind of thinking how to phrase this, but I would say for me, one of the biggest things that like pushed me were my affinity groups, because that's where I was surrounded by a community that I know supported me, and I knew that I was surrounded by people who looked like me and believed in me. So I would say if schools would just, just push this unity and just again, like anyone is able to do this, and reach out to the affinity groups to, like, hype up their members that, like, you got this, like, you can do it, like, see yourself in that position and what you can do for your other members and those students who come after you, because that's what I thought of when I run a lot. I was like, how can other Latinx women, Latinx students in general, if I run, would that encourage them to run as well going forward? And yeah, that's what I've got.
Hey,
Yes.
Yay!
Yes. I'm
How
so sorry that
about-
we are just we're right at our time. I know we could continue on this conversation for the next couple of hours. You guys were amazing. I was making all kinds of noises. Oh yes, snapping. I was so glad I was muted so that you didn't hear any of that. But what really struck me was how many of you talk about courage and vulnerability as being such important parts of leadership. How you work to center the voices of people who don't have a space and whose voices can go unheard. And the power of connection, right? From Adriana talking about affinity groups to what we heard about mentors. Jacqueline, the way you talked about, like, having people who are better at what you were trying to get better at, help teach you. And then Falana talking about people who support and affirm you. I just want to take a moment and pause. And there was so much good in this. And I want to challenge each and every one of you who's both on the panel, because I feel like I wrote down a number of things, and who was listening today, to think about one thing you're going to take from this and do something with. Whether it's, many of you talked in the chat about the messages that we hear, and Jackie talked about that. What's one message you heard today that you're going to add to that tape that you repeat for yourself? Write it on a Post-it. Put it somewhere where you're going to see it every day. What's an action that you can take from what you heard today? Who can you reach out to? I wrote down, I love this. I have not reached out to people whose advice I've used and told them how I did that and thanked them for that. Like, yes, help people feel like the effort that they put in to raise you up, that you valued that. So I hope that that you all are going to take something from today and you're going to move forward and use it in your lives. Thank you to our amazing panelists. Thank you to Wendy for guiding the conversation so thoughtfully and intentionally. And thank you to every single one of you who joined us today. You've heard a lot about SGS. That wasn't exactly what we were here to talk about, but leadership is at the heart of what we do. If you want to learn more about us or support what we're trying to do, both in our current location and in our future home, you can hop on our website. I believe that they've just put that chat in the link in the chat. Thank you again, everyone, for being here, and have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you.